Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I really do want to apologize for the delay on this video. I've been dealing with a lot of personal stuff internally and just been very busy, so it's taken me a minute to get to this video. But of course, I had to get on here and talk about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, the last installment, supposedly, in the Mission Impossible franchise, once again directed by Christopher McQuarrie, starring Tom Cruise, Hayley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Henry Czerny, and Angela Bassett. And this follows Ethan Hunt as he is trying to stop Gabriel and the entity and try to make sure that the world is once again safe from all harm. And of course, I mean, it's a Mission Impossible movie. You kind of figure, especially if you've seen Dead Reckoning, you know what this one's going to be. This has been teed up, like I said, to be the final film in the franchise with Tom Cruise and the gang. And honestly, I was so excited. Of course, this was one of my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year. I actually think I had it at number 3 because I have loved this franchise. I think this is one of the most consistent series in the history of cinema. I mean, of course, you have 2, which is not that good, but every other movie in this franchise is really good to great. So I definitely think that this was something that I was hoping would deliver on the promise of being the final Mission Impossible movie. And I heard a lot of the reviews were a little bit more middling than I thought. Not to say that they were middling, of course, because it's still got a very positive reception despite what some people said. You know who you are. I think the reactions definitely tempered my expectations a little bit because they were saying it's a really good film, but not one of the best in the franchise because it's bogged down by a lot of things, which is true, and we will get into that. But honestly, I don't think they could have ended this franchise any better. This is, to me, one of the most exhilarating in the entire series. And, of course, one that isn't without its fair share of flaws, but one that reaches heights that I think very few movies in this series do. And so, let's get right into the negatives, because I just want to get this out of the way. One of the big things I heard going into this movie was that there was, like, you know, mounds of exposition that bogged down, like, the first half hour of this movie. Constant cutting back to footage from other films that we've already seen. And I definitely would say that that is the case. I mean, the first 8 minutes of this movie, no spoilers really, is just a montage of all the clips that happened in the other 7 movies. And it's like, okay, was that really necessary? I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit when it started. And yes, the exposition is probably worse than even the last movie. And that was one of the issues I did have with Dead Reckoning. And I think, though, the reason I'm kind of able to overlook a lot of it, yes, it does slow the movie down a bit, but all the exposition makes sense. It's very easy to follow. You know, they have to rattle off a lot to get to the final set pieces, but yet again, it isn't as action-oriented, perhaps, in parts of this movie. While some of the other films are more breakneck in that regard, I definitely don't feel that way for a good majority of this movie. And then you get to the final hour and a half, which is one of the most mind-blowing spectacles you will ever see in any movie, in 2 sequences in particular, which I think are 2 of the absolute finest that this series has ever done, with the last one being the absolute best. I really don't think that ever has been topped. And the thing I find so admirable about Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, what they do with these movies, it's like they continually try to top themselves every time. And in some ways, they always tend to do it. And I just don't know how on an 8th entry in a franchise, they're still able to reach these exhilarating heights that we haven't seen before in any of these movies. I mean, it is absolutely insane. Tom Cruise is an absolute madman. I do not know how he is still alive, especially after watching this movie. I mean, my goodness. I won't get into much more in that regard, but it is absolutely insanely impressive from a stunt standpoint exactly what was achieved in this film, and I don't think that there are going to be many movies that live up to this level of achievement. It's really unfortunate that the stunt Oscar is coming after this series is concluded, because this would have easily won the Oscar for Best Stunts, and honestly, I feel like this movie should get an honorary Academy Award just because of it, because the stuff that Tom Cruise and company does in this film, I don't think many rational human beings would put themselves through. So, yeah, I definitely think that once the action really hits in this movie, once you really get into the bulk of the set pieces that, you know, this series has been known for, is when it truly, truly soars into the stratosphere. And I think the reason this works so well, too, and I will give credit to the script in this regard, is because the stakes are just so high. I mean, this is world-ending stakes, right? But not in a way where the other movies, yes, that was a part of the narrative, but this one has the most urgency out of all of the movies in the series. And I really, really love that it's like, if they make one little mistake, it's over for all of us. And you really, really feel that tension. Especially the Sevastopol sequence. I mean, oh my goodness, that is just one of the most carefully crafted pieces and sequences of tension building I've ever seen in any movie. Like, I was almost falling out of my seat by the end of it. And just the fact that everything had to be so precise in that sequence, you'll know what I mean when you see it, if you haven't already. And if you have, yeah, let me know if you're feeling the same way, because, woo, that was quite something. And I really do think that despite all the action set pieces that you come to watch these movies for, I really do think the character work, even if it isn't quite as compelling as it is in some other movies, I do think, you know, this buildup of the team that we've come to know all these years and the way they operate together in this, it feels like probably the most team-oriented Mission Impossible movie yet, or at least one of them, because, my goodness, the way they all tie into this narrative is so beautiful, and also in ways that were extremely emotional that I did not expect at all. Like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is the only Mission Impossible movie to ever make me cry. Like, really, they end this series on a high note, but not just one from, you know, a spectacle standpoint. It really is grounded in these characters, and also just the fact, if you've been around watching these movies that have been coming out for the past 30 so years, it really is so rewarding of an emotional payoff by the end of this film. And I just think the heart is so abundant in every way, and just the filmmaking, of course, with Tom Cruise risking his life to make these movies, and of course just the fact that, you know, you can tell that they really wanted to give the audience something special here. And I do think that this might be Tom Cruise's best turn as Ethan Hunt. I just think it is such a more emotionally demanding performance than a lot of his other turns as this character, understandably so. I think Hayley Atwell is great once again, coming back from Dead Reckoning, of course. Simon Pegg, always great. And I also really loved Rolf Saxon in this movie, who obviously comes back from the first film all those years ago, and what could have just been a one-off gag in the first movie has legitimate emotional payoff, because as much as I think some of the characters here are not as fully fleshed out as they could have been, one of my issues with this movie, I think what they do with his character is truly, truly special in ways that they did not even have to implement, but because they went out of their way to do so, it doesn't feel like just a callback. He really is an integral part of this particular chapter in the Mission Impossible series, and I really, really loved his character in this. I also really loved Tremel Tillman, who shows up as like a captain helping Ethan out, and every second he was on screen, like every line that he would deliver with such charisma, it was just so unpredictable and funny. And even though he makes a very brief appearance in this almost 3-hour-long movie, I think he was definitely a very memorable part of it. I think, to me, one of the things that didn't carry over as well from Dead Reckoning that I was hoping that they'd elaborate on is Gabriel, played by Isai Morales. I think he's one of the weakest villains in the franchise if I had to throw any big criticism at this film. He's kind of a cartoon character by the end of the movie, and I just wish that they had established, you know, the history between him and Ethan a lot more, because I won't get into too many spoilers, but I think there were a couple of missed opportunities when it came to the storytelling here and things that they set up in previous films. But there's also things that they tie together in ways that I really wasn't expecting at all, and was really quite a welcome surprise. I also think Pom Klementieff and Greg Tarzan Diaz's characters from Dead Reckoning don't get as much development as I wish they could have, even though they are an integral part of the team in this. So, you know, it is unfortunate here and there, just a couple of things, because this is the thing. This movie is very fundamentally flawed in a lot of ways, but I kind of have a hard time reconciling that with just how amazing everything is in this when they get it right. Like, I wouldn't say that this has consistently the best action set pieces from front to back, like something like Fallout, which I would still say is the peak of the entire franchise, easily the best film out of all the Mission Impossible movies. But I do think the best pieces in this trump anything that is in Fallout. Really, this is unbelievable what they achieved here. And I just think from even the narrative, like the way that they build the stakes in these characters, where they actually do put in a lot of effort, it all comes together in ways that sometimes are actually pretty subtle and very rewarding by the end of the movie. And there's so much conflict that is set up. And sure, it's like, does a lot of it rely on, you know, coincidences and everything being right? Yes, but it's a Mission Impossible movie. It is in the title, right? That's what you should expect. It's how do these writers write their way out of these corners and get these characters to where they need to go. I think that is probably the most fun thing about this movie. Besides the humor, besides the enthralling action, I honestly think, I'll put it to you this way. I would say after Fallout, Ghost Protocol would have been my second favorite of the series. And while this is nowhere near as character-driven as Ghost Protocol, and probably nowhere near as polished in some regards, I honestly think this is my second favorite movie in the entire franchise, just because everything that does come together is still a remarkable achievement in action filmmaking, in just telling this decades-long story that finally is getting its payoff all these years later. And honestly, I don't think they could have ended this series on a better note. I mean, of course, it's a little inconclusive as to if this is indeed the last Mission Impossible movie that will ever be made, but just the way it ends, the way it feels, what they do with these characters, it feels like this is all we need for the rest of the time, and I would be completely okay with that. I cannot wait to see this movie again in theaters. See this on the biggest screen you possibly can, obviously, preferably IMAX, because some of these sequences you are going to be holding your breath and clutching your seat for, and just being absolutely enamored by what you were seeing on the screen, as I certainly was. So I'm going to give Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning 8.5 out of 10. This is one of the first great blockbusters of the summer, and I'm very, very glad that this did not disappoint me, because I would have been so pissed if 2025 kept going down the toilet hole. And honestly, between this and Thunderbolts, we're really kicking off the summer in a big way, with a kind of high that I have not seen in a summer movie season for quite some time. Maybe in a couple years at least, because we had Dead Reckoning and we also had Oppenheimer that summer amidst a bunch of, Spider-Man. So I really do think that this is the best summer that we are going to have movie-wise for quite some time, at least for a couple of years since 2023. And I can't wait to see what you guys think about this movie. And if you have seen it, let me know down in the comments below just exactly what you thought about The Final Reckoning. And please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like what I'm doing here. Next video is probably going to be Bring Her Back, if I had to guess. I'm very excited to see that this weekend. Been hearing very, very great things. So can't wait to talk about that and so much more. And I will see you later.